did not tell me that he was coming.
It was almost 3:30 in the morning in a quiet Maryland neighborhood when a young father walked into a house he used to live in using a code he still knew by heart. Minutes later, 16 shots. Listen to the operator on the phone trying to keep a dying man alive.
How old is he? Is he awake? Is he breathing? Okay, just to clarify, is he breathing?
Now this right here is that same young man just weeks before that night, running for his life outside his own home while somebody chases him down with a gun.
It was like almost immediately, like he just took off. Like I just seen a fast motion past the car, and I just seen another fast motion past the car. And so in my head, I'm like, what was that? And she's like, what? And I'm like, I'm just trying to get my thoughts together. Like he getting chased down. Like this shit's really happening.
And this is his mother, years later, telling the whole world that this story is nowhere near finished, and that some people are going to pay for what happened, whether the courtroom got it right or not.
I was given anonymously, over 3,000 hours of recording after Tyree's death that will write her own fate. And it don't got nothing to do with Tyree.
So how does a 20-year-old rapper walk into a home he paid for, expecting to talk things out with the mother of his son, and end up dead on the floor between the bed and the wall with 16 shells around his body? And why did the man who pulled that trigger walk away with a manslaughter charge instead of murder? Stay with me, because the answer is messier than any title could ever tell you. Let me take you back to the beginning so all of this makes sense. The young man you keep hearing about was Tyree Tashawn Richardson, born on April 26, 2002 in Maryland, raised out in Glendale with family ties stretching across Bowie and Dunkirk. His people describe him as the light in every room, funny and loyal, a kid who balanced a tough exterior with real sweetness. He grew up hunting with his father and cousin, and he carried that closeness with him into everything he touched. By his late teens, Tyree had turned all of that into a name for himself. He rapped under the stage name FSO Gunk, putting out records about struggle and coming up and trying to make it out.
I had to walk through the rain, start getting money and some niggas change. When I get rich, we gon' buy me some change. Shit fucked up ain't the same.
Songs like This Ain't a Regular Soda and Losses built him a real local following, even if the numbers stayed in the thousands and never blew up into millions. He was underground, but he was moving, and people in Maryland knew who he was. The music was only one part of his hustle. Tyree ran a food truck called Despot 301, and he bred dogs on the side, always chasing another way to build something for himself and his family. More than any of that, he was a father. His son, Cody, was born in early 2021, and being there for that little boy was the center of his whole world. Cody's mother was a young woman named Autumn Anderson, and this is where the story starts to bend toward what happened. Tyree and Autumn went all the way back, meeting around 2016 when they were both 14 and getting together a couple years later. What they had was passionate, but it was heavy, full of arguments and breakups and getting back together. In the summer of 2019, they split for a minute, and during that gap, Autumn spent some time with a man named Terrence Kenneth Yancey before she and Tyree found their way back to each other. Hold on to that name, because that little detail matters more than it looks. Yancey was not some stranger who wandered into the picture at the end. He was somebody Autumn already knew from years before, and when things between her and Tyree finally fell apart for good, Yancey was the man she started dating again. Through all of it, Tyree kept his hands on the household. He was the one putting up the housing and the car and the money, even after the love got complicated, because Cody was in that house, and that was enough for him. He and Autumn lived together, first out in Crofton and then at Lakeside Court in Dunkirk, sharing custody of their son with handoffs every few days. Then in June of 2022, Tyree moved out for good after he found out Autumn was still in contact with Yancey, and he left a lot of his belongings behind and kept the peace so he could keep seeing his boy. But there was already blood in the water before any of that. Back on his birthday, April 27, 2022, somebody ambushed Tyree outside his Crofton home, and the whole thing was caught on a Ring camera as he scrambled to get away. The person telling it was right there in the car with him when it happened, and you can hear how fast it turned from a normal night into a nightmare.
I jumped in the driver's seat. I put the car in drive, and I started driving in the direction where Tyree ran.
Tyree survived that night without a scratch, but it changed him. He got quiet, he got careful, and he grew convinced that somebody close to him had set the whole thing up. He was looking over his shoulder now, and he could not shake the feeling that people in his own circle wanted him gone. That paranoia was still sitting on him when the night of June 13th, 2022 came around. The evening before, Autumn had picked their son up from Tyree, and the two of them were going back and forth over custody like they always did. Later that night, Autumn brought Terrence Yancey back to the Lakeside Courthouse, and the two of them went to bed in the early hours of the morning, somewhere around 2:47, with the little one and Autumn's sister also in the home. Around 3:30 in the morning, Tyree let himself into that house using a keypad code he still knew, the same code from when he lived there. Everything the record shows points to him coming to talk, to try and fix things, not to hurt anybody. He wasn't armed. He walked upstairs toward the bedroom, the one he used to sleep in, where Autumn was now lying next to Yancey. What happened next took only seconds. Yancey woke up to a figure in the dark and grabbed a handgun, and then he fired all 16 rounds from that gun. Autumn jolted awake to the flashes and the noise, recognized the shape of the man in the doorway as Tyree, and started screaming for Yancey to stop. By the time the shooting was done, Tyree was on the floor with wounds across his body, and the forensic work later showed shots landing in his back, his head, and his neck, with some of them coming after he had already turned or gone down.
The house erupted. Autumn ran to her sister JC's room and told her to call the police, and that call is one of the hardest things in this whole case to sit through. You can hear the operator trying to work the emergency, asking the basic questions you never want to hear asked about somebody you love.
JC, this is 911. Do you know who shot him or where the other person is?
The operator kept pushing, trying to figure out if there was still a threat in the house and whether anybody could help the young man bleeding out on the floor.
Is there a weapon there? No.
Tyree's family has never gotten over the way those first minutes went. They point to moments in the chaos where somebody was calling out for the household dog while Tyree lay there dying. And to them, that lack of urgency says everything. The operator walked the household through chest compressions, but there was no pulse and no breathing to bring back. Deputies got there around 3:40 in the morning and pronounced Tyree dead at the scene, his body wedged between the bed and the wall. Yancey did not stick around to explain himself. He grabbed his phone, went out of that house barefoot in a pair of Autumn's pink pajama pants, and took off into the woods nearby, ditching the gun somewhere along the way. That gun in the woods would come back to haunt him in court later, but in the moment, all it did was set off a full-blown search. Police flooded the area, and helicopters and canine units combed the neighborhood for a full day looking for him. Think about how strange that flight really was. A man who had just fired 16 shots and killed somebody was now out in the dark in his socks and a woman's pink pajama pants, moving through backyards in a quiet suburb, trying to disappear before the sun came up. At one point, Yancey hid in somebody's backyard, and later he walked up to a neighbor named Christopher Wilson, claiming he had been carjacked and asking to use a phone. Wilson was not buying it. He noticed the shape of a gun pressing against the pocket of Yancey's hoodie, felt the danger in the air, and turned him away before calling the police. That neighbor's gut feeling and that gun-shaped bulge he described would later become part of the case against Yancey in court, tying him to the very weapon he tried to throw away. That instinct helped tighten the net. Not long after, Yancey was arrested at a gas station in the early hours of June 14th, a little over 24 hours after the first shot was fired. By then, Tyree was already gone, and a family that had spent his birthday in April terrified of losing him was now planning a funeral. The man they buried was 20 years old, and the fight over what actually happened in that bedroom and whether it was self-defense or something closer to an execution was only just getting started. Terrence Kenneth Yancey was 22 years old, out of Washington, D.C., and he came into this with a history of gun-related charges. When the case reached the courtroom, his side of it was simple. He said he woke up to a stranger busting into a dark room, saw a shadowy figure raise a hand, and fired because he thought his life and Autumn's were in danger. In his telling, he had no idea the man in the doorway was Tyree. The state saw it completely differently. The trial ran in Calvert County Circuit Court in April of 2023, and prosecutors brought more than 300 pieces of evidence to make one point over and over. This was not a couple of scared shots in the dark. This was a full magazine, 16 rounds, and a lot of them landed after Tyree was already falling or already down. The forensics carried the weight of it. A crime scene technician put trajectory rods into the bullet holes in the walls and ran a three-dimensional laser scan of the room, and the picture that came back showed the shooter moving, firing from the bed and then from a raised position, with several shots coming down at a downward angle. There was even blood spatter on Tyree's sock that suggested he was low to the ground, kneeling or already collapsed when some of those rounds hit him. To the prosecution, that was the difference between defending yourself and standing over somebody and finishing the job. Autumn took the stand and told the court she woke to the gunfire, saw the flashes, recognized Tyree, and screamed for Yancey to stop. She also said something that stuck with a lot of people, admitting that Yancey always had a gun on him. Yancey had a chance to take a deal before any of this went in front of a jury, an offer that would have capped his exposure at a handful of years, but he turned the plea down and rolled the dice on a trial. That gamble half paid off and half blew up in his face. On April 17th, the jury cleared him of first and second-degree murder, but convicted him of voluntary manslaughter, plus firearms violations, 4 counts of reckless endangerment for spraying a house full of people, including a child, and a count for destroying evidence when he tossed the gun. In plain terms, the jury believed he really was afraid, but they did not believe emptying an entire clip into an unarmed man was a reasonable way to answer that fear. Then came the sentence, and this is the part that split everybody down the middle. On July 28, 2023, the judge handed Yancey 18 active years, with the requirement he serve at least 9 of them before he can even be considered for parole. The state's attorney called it justice for the family. Tyree's people heard 18 years for 16 shots and felt like the math would never add up, no matter how you tried to explain it to them. Yancey tried to get the whole thing thrown out on appeal, going after the expert testimony and the audio and a jury instruction he wanted. It didn't work. In October of 2025, the Appellate Court of Maryland affirmed the convictions and found no real errors in how the trial was run. As far as the courts are concerned, the case is closed. Tyree's family has refused to let it stay closed in the court of public opinion. They keep his name alive through Instagram series like Road to 22 and The Life and Legacy of Tyree Richardson, and they say they wake up every day at 3:32 in the morning, the time he died. They're pushing out his unreleased music for his son's benefit and talking about a biopic. And above all, they reject the idea that Tyree was some intruder. He had a key, he had lived in that house, he was there to see his child's mother, not to hurt anyone. His mother in particular has made it clear she is not done, and that she believes a reckoning is still coming for people who think they got away clean.
For you and whoever else that's involved. Sometimes timing is everything. People write their own fate. What you thought you got away with today, you'll pay for it in another way, and it may not even be Tyree's murder. You cannot be out on the street, walking the streets, and living a foul life. I don't care what you say about me.
And here's what makes this case so hard to shake. It sits right on the ugly line of self-defense in a home where the so-called intruder was not a stranger at all. He was the father of the child in the next room, a man who had paid for that roof and still had the code to the door. When the person coming through the door is somebody you know, somebody you replaced, the question of who had the right to be scared and who had the right to shoot stops being simple. That gray area is exactly where Tyree lost his life, and it's exactly why his family is still fighting. Rest in peace to Tyree Richardson. He was 20 years old, a father, a hustler, and a young man who walked into that house looking to make peace, not war. If you know somebody stuck in a love situation that keeps turning dangerous, share this with them. Because pride and jealousy and one gun in the wrong hands is all it took to end a whole life here. Tell me in the comments what you think that jury got right and what they got wrong.
Continue calling, continue celebrating Tyree's life. Continue. If you don't think it's making a difference, it's making a huge difference. And that's nobody but him above. Nobody. That is Tyree above, causing a havoc that he has always caused.